Okay, this is a video of some of my cymbal stash. As you know, there is a website called CYMBALS, and I've been a member of that. Well, I haven't posted on there forever, but that's a pretty cool site. There's some more jazzy, snobby guys on there, but they're all pretty good guys, and a lot of them know a lot about cymbals. And in any case, I think I'm a true cymbal-holic. I mean, actually, I'm a lot-aholic. I'm a drum-aholic and a Oreo cookie-aholic and a Matt's chocolate chip cookie-aholic and all kinds of holics. But anyway, I just want to make a video. At some point I'll put the drums up, but I thought I'd start with the cymbals because I realized I have a whole bunch of them. So what I'm going to do, I have a lot of cymbals. You know, I'm just obsessive compulsive, and it's sort of embarrassing. Like at first people don't believe you how many you have, and so of course you have to defend yourself and tell them. And then you end up feeling sort of like a fool because you told them, because then it's like you go from proving yourself that you have a lot, and then being like, wow, this guy is sort of sick in the head, and too bad for him. Anyway. So I'm sure a lot of cymbal and guitar-aholics could probably feel the same way. Anyway, so this is what I have. This is my personal, I know it sounds so pretentious, but this is my personal stash of stuff that I've narrowed down to that I just never ever want to get rid of. Of course, there's about 8 times as much that I now have to get rid of. But anyway, these are Zildjians. This is my stash of Zildjians. I keep these in cymbal safes. This is here probably a late 70s, early 80s. I think it's a late 70s because I think the kid I got it from, if I recall, was a late 70s Ludwig kit. Anyway, this is a medium. It actually says on there medium thin crash, and it's a nice crash. Now you can kind of hear, I sometimes talk about with Zildjians, the very bowly shape. Do you see like that sort of, like it's very bowl shaped? Zildjians, starting in my opinion, in the late 60s, well into the 70s and then through the 80s and the 90s, had a very bowl, a very steep sort of profile. You know, the Ks, the American Ks, and the Istanbul Ks have a much flatter profile. But I think that what they started doing in the early mid-70s and on is they started making the cymbals a little more bowl-shaped for a little more volume on the crash. Psh, you know, when you're playing in the mix, you know, the EQs and stuff, you don't hear that low fundamental kind of like that. You don't really hear that bah. You just hear that psh. So, in my opinion, B20 alloy. I'm going to ramble a lot around here, but what can you do? B20 alloy, which is what Zildjians are made out of, and Sabians, and Paiste 602s, which they just reintroduced, and pretty much all the Turkish stuff that comes up, Bosphorus and all that stuff, Dream Bliss and everything. They're B20. And B20 is a great alloy. You know, obviously it's better. It's good for jazz. A lot of guys like it for jazz and stuff, and for rock and everything too. So I sort of love both alloys, the common alloys, B20 and B8, which is, you know, the Paiste alloy. Anyway, so there's a lot to talk about. This is a medium thin crash. It's very nice. It records really nice. And then I have, I forget which one this is. This is, it says, you can't see it, but it actually says Crash Ride very faintly. And I think this is a mid-70s, or maybe a later 60s. It doesn't say Zildjian on it. It's possible it wasn't cleaned off the bottom because you'd sort of see a ghost or an artifact, but I think this is probably late 60s. This is a nice one too. It's a little heavier, and it's higher pitched. But you can see that this one isn't quite as bowl-shaped as the one I just showed you. And that one isn't even as bowl-shaped. There are some from like the mid-80s that are just like crazy bowl-shaped. Anyway, so here's two. These are two. I love 18s. So here's another 18. This one is I think a early 7. No, this is a late 70s, I think. And this one, yeah, this one has a little more of a bowl shape. I mean, it's hard to, you can see it yourself. A lot of you guys have had a lot of Zildjians over the years. You know what I'm talking about. You know, the bigger bell and it profiles, you know, goes way down. And it doesn't mean that they're, you know, I just don't, the sound out of all the Zildjians I've ever had, these are ones I've kept because they have the cleanest, the highest pitched, more Paiste-like sound to me when you're playing with them. So I kind of keep them. And then here's another 18. This is a pair of 18s I got from a music around in Chicago. That was on Milwaukee Avenue. Now this is an 18-inch pair from the 60s. It was an orchestral pair. I think it was a It wasn't it wasn't like the symphonic French, Viennese, or Germanic, like that type. It was the I think they just said concert on them, if I remember, because I did clean them because they were very dirty. Now I love these cymbals because you'll see, God, it's really hard to show you, but the profile on this one is very flat. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to hold like this. See how not bowl-shaped it is? And that's what I love about the 50s Zildjians, Vita Zildjian, the 60s, because they're so, they're just, I mean, listen, it's like, I just prefer the sound of them. And this has the bigger late 60s stamp. Of course, I got the pair for like $100. And this cymbal to me actually looks a lot like when you see Bonham play, when you see him playing in like 69-ish, when you see him playing that show Two and Scene, that French show. He has an 18 on his left. In my opinion, you can see what looks to be a lot like 602s all around him. Except for the crash, the 18, which looks like it's on his left, looks to be almost this exact Zildjian. I think he, you know, Bonham did play Zildjians. If you find some pictures of him on the web, you'll see him playing some Zildjians. Of course, not on stage, but especially in the early days too, like the first tour when he's playing the Black Diamond Pearl kit, you'll see Zildjians on the kit. And here's another 18. This is the sister to that one. And this one's nice too. Here it's a lot higher pitched. And this has a flatter profile too anyway, because Zildjian, in their marching, you know, in their symphonics, you know, the handheld cymbals, they generally didn't. They kept the profiles pretty flat. And for a long time what I did is I didn't play any regular Zildjians. What I used to do is I used to get, and this actually might be one of them, I would get the marching cymbals. Okay, medium thin suspended. You'll see how much, if you ever get the the suspended cymbals and the French symphonic and the Viennese symphonic, they're just very flat profile. A lot like K's, modern K's. They sound beautiful. You know, plus they're cheaper too. Sometimes on eBay you'll see a set, well, sometimes a set of like French symphonic for like $150. That's like $75 a cymbal. They're great. I would recommend, in my opinion, from my experience, the crashes, the 18s anyway, go with the French symphonic. Both cymbals will be good because one is heavier than the other. That's how they pair them up. The Viennese, both the cymbals are good. One is great. The other one's kind of heavy. The Germanic, forget about. They're sewer cabs. But also too, if you find a 22-inch pair, a 20 or 22-inch pair of those, they make good rides. They have real nice flat profiles. You rarely see those. Anyway, so here's another one that I have. This is the lighter of a Viennese that I got from the 80s, or even early 90s. I got this on eBay too. This one has a little crack at the bell hole. In my opinion, a crack at the bell hole doesn't mean anything. I mean, you'd rather not have it there, but from my experience, they don't grow. I mean, they might a little bit if you don't have them on felt and stuff, and you keep just smacking it 10 times an hour. But, I mean, if you have a crack anywhere else in the cymbal, you know, forget about it. But at the bell hole, to me, I've had some cymbals that have cracked at the bell, have little cracks at the bell holes for years and years. They never grew. That's my opinion. That's actually real. That's 602 sounding to me. I love the sound. And then here is this is a pair. I had a pair of 20-inch cymbals. I can't remember what the model was. If they were concert or if they were, I think they were Viennese marchers. This is a 20, and they're great. It's a great ride. I sold the other one to my friend Frank. But do you see how flat that profile is? If this was in the 50s and 60s, it would be about that profile. Once the 70s and 80s and 90s came, they got real super, the bow. They got really bowl-shaped. The bowl meaning like this way, like it would come up, you know. But see how flat that is, and that's a great sound to me. The flatter cymbals. And this is a beautiful, it's a 20. I'm not too keen on 20s for a ride, but this one is beautiful, so I'm keeping it. Anyway, I have some more Zildjians too, because I have a 24-inch keeper as well. Anyway, I'll put those away for now. But I have a funny story about Zildjian. I remember, you know, I've always called up Zildjian and Peisty and given my opinion about stuff, and of course they're like, you know, who the hell is this guy, whatever. But I did call up, I called up Zildjian, I think in the late, maybe the early, about 2000. And I told him, I said, listen, you know, you guys, or maybe your late 90s. I said, your guys' cymbals are great, I love them, you know, I play all kinds of cymbals, whatever. But I told him that their trend of going to the more bowl-shaped cymbals, you know, I thought, you know, I told him how I felt about symphonic cymbals, and how they were flatter, and back in the 50s and 60s they were flatter, and I think they sounded better, and they were like, you know, they totally placated me. They were like, yeah, you know. It was a lady. I don't know if it was the Zildjian lady or whoever. But in any case, I have noticed that starting about 10 years ago, that a lot of the A's do seem flatter. They're not as bowl-shaped as they used to be. Which, of course, has nothing to do with me calling them. I'm sure they figured it out. In any case, here's some of my keeper Peisties. This is a 16-inch medium, a 505. Now, from my experience, a medium, you know, is kind of their term sort of for a crash ride. They just call it a medium. It doesn't say medium crash. It doesn't say medium ride. It just says medium. This is a nice cymbal. You can hear the higher frequencies of B8. These are some of my, these are keepers that I have. These are Formula 602 Sound Edge bottoms. Original late 60s Sound Edge bottoms. Actually, this one might be an early... No, this one is actually from 72. But I got this on eBay. I picked a couple of these up. Because I sold my I had a magical pair of 602 15-inch hats. I got a pair from a guy named Jim Strike in up at the Drum Pad in Chicago. Nice guy. He had a pair of 15-inch Sound Edge hats, probably from like 67, right when they came out, because they just said patent pending on them. Of course, there was no date stamp or anything. It was probably, and it had a busload of ripples. You know, most nowadays on the Sound Edge hats you see about 36, 38 ripples. The original ones had like 52 or 48, if I remember. Sometimes you'd see 46 or 44. Anyway, I think this one is 38 or 4. I forgot. But anyway, this pair that I had, the bottom was perfect. The top was cracked, had a couple cracks. So he gave me for $60 the pair. At the time, it was 1992, I think. I called up Peisty and I said, "Listen, you know what?" At the time, they were 93ish, 92 or 93. They were getting ready to discontinue the 602s. They didn't really push them anymore. So they had like they did have a couple pairs of 602 Sound Edge hats left, but they also had they had one top left. So it might have been early 94. Well, it was, I know I used them in a recording in 94, so it was before that. Anyway, so they sent me the second to last or the last top that they had, the loaner top. I got it through Thoroughbred Music in Florida. So I had this top, 15-inch Sound Edge, 15-inch top with the patent pending bottom. So it was probably one of the first 602 Sound Edge bottoms they ever made, with probably one of the, if not the last, or one of the last tops. And they were made identical. They were, it's like they were made for each other. They looked, the weights hadn't changed. In my opinion, Peisty didn't change the weights of the 602s. They didn't, in my opinion, they didn't beef up the models through the 70s and 80s volume craze. But anyway, so there's a 602 15-inch bottom. Here's another one. I thought I had another one, but maybe I don't. Now this one, yeah, this is another patent pending. This one does not have a serial number stamped into it. So this one's almost identical to the one that I had, that my friend Bob, actually Bob has that pair of hi-hats, God love him, I sold them to him. And you'll see this one. It just says patent pending. Okay, so this is probably 67, 68. And this one has more ripples though. The patent pending one I got from Strike had, I want to say like 46 ripples. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Yeah, this has 42 ripples about. You know, but I don't want to waste time counting. This one, the newer one probably is like 40. Anyway, it's a long story. Anyway, and here's a loaner 602 15 top I bought. I honestly, I couldn't remember if it's maybe a 15 thin or a... But I got this on eBay, and of course, the Sound Edge cymbals are lathed differently. They have a very tight lathing. The Sound Edge 602s, that is. Now, the other Sound Edge, you know, 505 or 2002 or whatever they had, they weren't lathed differently. They looked just like all the rest of the 2002s or the 5. But the Sound Edges in the 602 series are very thin lathing, almost like what you would have seen on the Giant Beats, even a little thinner than that. The original and now the current Giant Beats. Anyway, this is a 15 that I bought. That it's sort of a, it's okay. I mean, I tried it with the 602 Sound Edges, and it didn't sound like, because an original Sound Edge top is a very thin cymbal. It's a very delicate cymbal, and they sound beautiful. Like when you close it with your foot, they sound great. But you can't hit them real hard because they'll crack. Anyway, here's another. Oh, this is an interesting one. Somebody had cut down, I think, an 18 to a 15. They did it professionally. They did it great, you know. So I bought this one on eBay. I didn't realize, though, that it was cut down until I got it. But it's actually a great symbol. You see, it's real flat because it's the basic center of the symbol before. I mean, the Pisces are flatter anyway. God love them. But this is a good one, and this was sort of a cool pair I played for a while. I put this thinner 602 with that 15 in. So anyway, here is. This is a sound formula, the original sound formula, which were lathed a little. They were lathed differently than the Frankenstein-y ones, like the one I showed you over there. They had sort of a. I much prefer the original sound formula. Well, I shouldn't say much prefer. That's not true. But I definitely preferred the look of the original sound formulas. To me, the sound. I can't honestly say whether I prefer one or the other because it's not like I've had tons of one or the other. But anyway, so this is the original sound formula. Now they took this logo from the Sound Creation. Pisces had a B20 alloy symbol called the Sound Creation from the, I think, early mid-70s to whenever they, close to the end of the line. I don't think they offered the Sound Creations up into the 90s. I might be wrong. Anyway, so the logo is almost completely taken from that line. Here's an 18 I have. This is a Power Crash. This is the only one I could find. I prefer it, I think, a little thinner, but it's a beautiful symbol. I'm going to keep those babies. That is B12-ish. I used to think when Pisces first came out with the alloy, the B12 or whatever it is, sort of a cross between B8 and B20, I felt like they cracked a lot. I used to see a lot of guys with cracked sound formulas and signatures, and I don't know if that was something they worked out. Maybe the early batches of the alloy. Now this is my opinion. I used to see a lot of cracks in them, so I avoided them like the plague. I thought they sounded great, though. I thought the crashes and everything sounded really great live, especially even if you weren't mic'd. In other words, it was almost like B20. Like, I feel with B20 alloy, up close, it sounds a lot nicer when you're playing up close to it, like behind the drums and within a few feet, than B8. B8 alloy, like Pisces, more or less the bread and butter, 2002 and everything else, can sound a little harsh when you're up close to it, but from a distance it sounds beautiful. Anyway, the B12 is sort of they sound beautiful up close and beautiful from a distance, but sometimes even a little sterile recorded, I thought. But I have a lot of opinion. So here is this is, in my opinion, the best B8 alloy 18-inch crash you'll ever find. A Pisces 505 crash 18. Medium is good, it's a little heavier, but this is it. I mean, I think, I just love it. Everybody I've had, over the years, I'm not kidding, I've had probably at least 15 of those. Now I think I have probably maybe 5 or 6 left. These two here, I have a couple others. I just sold one to a buddy of mine. But these are the Ultra Keepers. They just sound beautiful. I don't know what it is about them. And they do, sometimes usually with the 505, the original lathing, they were almost identical to 2002 sort of, where there was that tighter underlathing. And then with the 2002, if you look at it, I don't have any here handy, but you'll see it's almost like the next lathing that goes over is almost variable. Like it gets real close and tight, and it gets a little wider and a little close again. But the 505, it's perfectly uniform. Like the next lathing, it's almost about a ½ inch apart all the way out. It gets a little tighter as you go. And the 2000 was very similar. The original 2000 was very similar to these. In fact, the 2000 sort of took over the 505. And then I have, these are nice cymbals too. For a 20-inch, these 20-inch 404s, the brown labels I think are the best. 404-20 Ride as a crash. This is a black label. This one doesn't have a serial number. But, I mean, it's probably from the mid-70s. I think they just missed putting a serial number on this one, but it's a beautiful cymbal. In the days before they made giant beats, I'm going to have to make a series of these videos because I could talk forever. Before they brought the giant beats back, and this is a true story, which I love to tell people. I know they don't believe me, but I'll say it again here. I had first heard about the giant beats in a book that my brother had on Led Zeppelin, like the early 80s, and it said giant beats, and I remember I thought that was just funny. It was just such a funny term, giant beats. Like, it seems like such an old term to me. Like, so, anyway, it was kind of funny. So as some years went by, I got more curious, and I turned into a total John Bonham head, and I got my hands on my first set of 505s and everything. I would sort of look around in the stores for used giant beats. I didn't realize at the time, as most people know now, and I discovered then, that the logo, of course, on the original giant beats came off. The original giant beats, as probably everybody now knows, but if you have the stamp here, right, normally on a cymbal, you know, usually on a Zildjian, everything in the stamp is here. Well, a giant beat, the embossed stamp is here at the 3 o'clock, and it said giant beat at the 9 o'clock in a very light white ink that looked like old Western font. It said giant beat, and it came off real easy. And I know I saw at least one, a 24 over the years. I didn't know it was a giant beat because there was no inking on it. Anyway, but of course, Paiste, I think in about, if I remember, in 71, the year 70 or 71, the year they supposedly discontinued the giant beats, which they didn't. They made them through the early 70s, my experience, because I've seen ones that have serial numbers on them. Definitely up until at least 73. The first number is 3 on the serial number. But anyway, about 71, they changed the inking from the giant beat here. They put it here, where it is now. I think it's here. God, see, now I can't remember. Is it here or is it here? Maybe it's here. I don't know. But they put it in the 12 or the 6 o'clock position in black. In the position now that when you get the reissues, it's in the same position. Of course, but the stamp stayed, the embossed stamp stayed there. You know, I don't remember. I think it's here, actually. Like you'd see here, it actually says Paiste 404, so it probably is here. I just don't remember. My brain is shot. So then here is a Paiste 20-inch medium. Now, 20-inch, I didn't even know. I looked forever for a 20-inch 505. I could never find one. And thank God for eBay, because finally eBay came along in 98 or 99, and suddenly all the shite came out of the woodwork you never saw. So I finally got my hands on a couple 20-inch 505 crashes. To me, they're just a teeny bit too thin. They're still great if you can find them. But I think a 505 20-inch medium is the shit for a 20-inch B8 cymbal. It's beautiful. And I didn't, you know, this is embarrassing. I didn't even know I had this. My God, I forgot I had this. Anyway, how embarrassing. Here's a 2002 heavy crash. Now, the interesting about the heavy crash models is the original heavy crashes came out, I think, in the late 80s, because they had, remember with 2002, they just had crash, medium, and ride. That's it. They might have come with the heavy crash maybe in the later 70s because they had the heavy hats. I forgot. I just hadn't seen any. But they had original bash of heavy. Let me put it this way. I know in 1992 I bought an 18-inch heavy crash because when I first sort of got into Paiste, I got to check the time on this. For the love of God, I never realized how much I could yap about this stuff. Jesus, 24 minutes. All right, well, I'm going to have to stop this one. My God. Anyway, so I'll make it more, I guess. I'll make this a saga. 2002, anyway, what I was saying before about the Paiste, again, the 2002, I don't know if you can see it here, forgive me, but there's the main lathing, a tighter lathing, not quite as tight as the 602 sound edge lathing, but then what they do is they put like a thicker lathing. Here you can see it's thicker, then it gets real close and thin, almost like you'd see on a record before, on the old records at the middle before the song starts. It kind of, the groove, the main groove gets kind of thin and then wider. Anyway, wow, I totally forgot about that guy. Anyway, this is one of my babies. This is great. Paiste came out with, this is a 2000 Sound Reflections. Before the giant beats were reissued, the closest you could find, from my opinion, where I was sitting to a giant beat sound, were the 2000 series Sound Reflections or the 3000 Reflectors. The 3000 Reflectors for me were generally a bit heavier, so I steered clear of them for the most part. But 2000 Sound Reflections. Now, it's a brilliant D cymbal, but if you look at the lathing, it's very giant beaty. See how it's very uniform? It's not identical to a giant beat, but for a long time, the Sound Reflections and the Reflectors were the closest, in my opinion, you could get to a giant beat because the decay went on longer, probably due to the lathing. This is a beautiful cymbal, and of course I forgot I had this too. How embarrassing. So in any case, but yeah, I have a lot of, I've been assing around with cymbals forever, and it is embarrassing for a long time. And part of it is because I am obsessive compulsive. So it's like an itch you have that you can't quite ever scratch. And I, believe it or not, I have a lot more cymbals around here. But these are the keepers. These are my babies. So I'll make more videos, I guess. I didn't think this was going to go on so long.